Fog machine. It should be there. You just hit the button, James.
Can somebody tell me where our hosts are?
Yeah.
What?
I was scared that you could hear me too.
I heard like a hum.
White on set.
Alright, let's get this done.
Roll camera. Roll sound.
Season 1, episode 14, marker.
Action. Welcome to All the Hats, a podcast about filmmaking and industry.
Eric with a K and James Geary. Both Eric and James went to Liberty University and graduated with a degree in film. And they do a podcast called All the Hats. Guys, welcome to Beyond Reason and congratulations on being my podcasters of the month.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So
this is my first award for podcasting.
For podcasting. All right. Well, now, Eric, you've been in podcasting for as long as I have. James, All the Hats is the first podcast you've ever been on or done, correct?
Yeah, definitely. First one.
So what made you guys decide to start doing All the Hats?
I sort of wanted to do a podcast for a while because, I don't know, I do sound. That's what I do in film. So I kind of figured that was something I could do that I don't require like a lot of other people, if that makes sense. Like I don't have to get a team together in order to do it. So I figured that would be like one of the things I can do that's not held up by a bunch of red tape or trying to get a bunch of people on board, you know,
money and all that. You don't have to pitch it to a producer to get financing.
Yeah,
you just do it.
I literally can just do it myself, and I have plans in the future for other podcasts too. So hopefully I can learn a lot from this experience and bring it to other things too. So that's the hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the best way to work on your craft. Podcast is nothing but audio. So if you can master that, you've got it made in the film industry because you've got the main part done of what you want to do. So now I've listened to you guys from the very beginning, and I'm loving the interviews plus the ones where it's just you guys talking about different parts of the industry. Eric, you're kind of a jack of all trades, except for you hate audio, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, James, have you strictly are audio, or is there stuff you worked on different projects?
I've PA'd and done locations on other films.
Okay,
but that's not the goal. The goal is audio. The goal is boom opping, mixing, and also recently I've done a lot of post audio stuff. So
okay. So what has been the most interesting for the podcast so far for you guys? Is it more so doing the interviews and getting other people's perspectives in the industry, or is it more just kind of hashing stuff out between the two of you?
I think it's kind of both, because I enjoy the interviews a lot because I don't know, like there's a different type of communication that happens when you're sitting down with someone and interviewing them than just talking to someone. I think it pulls more out of the other person that sometimes I didn't realize, and I've known the people for a while. So I don't know. I just think it's kind of cool. And then it's just fun talking to Eric anyways. We talk about stuff other than film all the time. So
Well, no, and I agree because we do have the aspect of, when you get a chance to interview somebody, you're interviewing specifically about their department or what it is they're doing in the industry, which with our friends, it's not something you normally do. I mean, honestly, when we're all together, one of the last things we often want to do is sit here and talk about film because that's where we work. We do it all day long. Don't get me wrong. It's the one job that we love to talk about, too. Obviously, we have a podcast for it. Yeah. But when it comes to like when James and I are just kind of throwing things around and talking and whatnot, it brings up conversation that we normally maybe wouldn't have. And it gets us thinking about things that we maybe wouldn't have or didn't think about in the past. And it's intriguing because it sparks new ideas, not only about new films, but how to go about or approaching new films, how to create films, how to develop them, how to get through pre-production, production, and post-production. And it really allows me to learn from his side of everything, all the audio and stuff. I don't know anything about it. He's taught me a few things here and there in post-production. But it's a good thing to know, so I think so. And it's actually funny because just one of our last episodes, I don't know how much you cut out, but we got a little heated because we weren't on the same page about a certain discussion. I got a little frustrated for a moment there.
Yeah, I was approaching something from a friendship level, and he was approaching it from a business level, and those things are very different. So obviously and we didn't know how each other were approaching the subject.
Right.
And
basically we went through the whole thing and we kind of let it go and we ended the show and he's like, are you mad at me?
Like after I edited it, I kind of realized also like where he was coming from and I understood what he was saying a little more after listening to it over and like, editing the episode.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, same thing goes for him and I when we're doing Pure Truth Radio. I could have said something very jokingly and he can take it serious and vice versa. And it's just one of those things. Unless you're doing the video like Eric and I do sometimes looking at each other, you don't know the context because you don't see the person's face or mannerisms, so you don't know what they're saying. I mean, you guys are in the same room, but still, you guys were on two separate wavelengths. So that's the one awesome thing about a co-host is you have that dynamic of even if you disagree, you guys can eventually end up on the same page. And I'm sure you guys have done this since I don't know how many episodes you guys have recorded now.
Recorded or published?
Recorded total, including what published and what's not.
10 or 11. We stopped to edit a few, so like until I edit it, it's not like numbered, I guess.
Yeah, probably around 10 or 11 right now. 10 or 11. We have almost enough to get us through the new year.
Okay.
Yeah, we need a few more before to get to the second, because we release on Wednesdays.
Right. So
New Year's is on Tuesday. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Trying to plan ahead. So
I know, Eric, you said you learned audio stuff since you don't really do it much from him, but from either of you guys, have you talked about stuff and eventually come to the conclusion that, oh, I could have done this differently on this particular project or that particular project, or you know what, that would have made more sense when I was doing The Revealed, for example, for Eric's short film. Is there anything you guys have learned from just talking to each other about the industry on the podcast?
Yeah, for sure. At least for me, I can answer that question with a definite yes. Like, there's a lot of things that, I mean, just through the podcast, and not just through the podcast, but just, I mean, I've been in Atlanta for a year, so I've been living with this jerk for about a year. Wow. I'm just kidding. No, so I've been living with James for about a year now. And I mean, I've learned a lot of stuff in the post audio aspect that I think would have really helped me on The Revealed, for an example, and I think helped tremendously on A Bloody Film, which is my most recent short that was released again for the second time with a whole new audio mix. Just I think like last week or 2 weeks ago. So the good thing about it, and it works great for me, and I think for James and for our other roommate Aaron as well, who was on one of our episodes. The three of us come from three different backgrounds in film, and so we're constantly learning and teaching each other new things. Now, James isn't much of like a writer or a director or anything like that, but he is a developer. He has ideas. He throws ideas out all the time. So he really does have some type of mindset within the development stages. And then again, in the post and sound stages, where our other roommate is much more in the camera department. So he's production, he's thinking about imagery. And then me come from a director standpoint, producer standpoint, I'm thinking of images and more or less how the business runs and how everything comes together throughout the whole. So yeah, we're constantly bouncing ideas and learning from each other all the time.
Yeah, I think most of the things I've learned are on the writing side because we went to the same school, and I'm not good with a camera. I wouldn't say that I'm a good cinematographer or anything, but most of the things I've learned from Eric are like writing stuff, like how to piece something together. Like we wrote I wrote a short, he turned it into a feature. It's called Duplex. And I don't know, I like through that process of working with him has definitely made my, I don't know, I learned a lot from it. It's made me think a lot about writing and stuff.
Well, I don't know if it's the same for film as it is for books, but the one nice thing is if you have a great idea, you can pitch it to a ghostwriter who can write it for you, put your name on it, but also say actually written by. And that's the one thing I've always found interesting is there are actually a lot of great stories that were written by ghostwriters.
Mm-hmm. See, but I have a problem with that, at least in the film industry side of it.
Yeah, it feels wrong to me.
Yeah, well, so from an author standpoint, Justin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you are an author. You've released a book. You have a second one that you're currently working on and rewriting or revising the first as well again. But as an author, you're pretty much writing for yourself if you're independent. Mm-hmm. So you don't have anyone who's coming to you saying, hey, I'm going to pay you to write this story or write that story. More or less, an author is paid to do what they want to write if it's okay with their agent or the manager or publisher, I guess would be the best term for that. Where in the film industry, as a screenwriter, even though like if you're independent, you are writing for yourself. But if you're not independent, or if you are independent, you're just trying to get a film out there, you're going to have people coming to you saying, hey, can you write this or can you write that? So if you have a ghostwriter who's your screenwriter and your name is on it as the writer, and someone comes to you and says, hey, can you write me this? You can't say yes because you don't know how to write.
Yeah.
You need a ghostwriter, which means you then have to pay your ghostwriter to write something. And obviously there's ways around it, but in reality, it's if you're going to put your name on something in this industry, you sure as hell better be able to do whatever it is you're saying you can do, because I guarantee you somebody's going to find out the truth. And when they do, it can have a pretty negative effect on your career.
Yeah, I agree.
So doing the podcast, is there anybody out of the industry that hands down you would want to have them on over anybody else, whether that's actor, director, in any part of the industry?
Oh my gosh. So you mean like anybody?
Like,
no matter how big they are.
Big or small, yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it because I usually try to keep a level head and try to like just be like, okay,
this guy,
these are people I've worked with.
Humble.
I know I can get these certain people, or at least ask these certain people. Like I'm gonna try soon to try to get a Grammy Award winning sound guy or producer for music on here soon that I worked with on a film recently. Hopefully that works out. He seems like a busy guy, so hopefully I can get him to carve some time out for me. I don't want to say his name just because.
Oh no, that's fine.
Don't get him. But that would be amazing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great guy. He cusses a lot, so I'm kind of worried about that, like too much. But so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, right now, there's one thing that's important to remember is we're independent filmmakers, and so a lot of our connections are independent as well.
Yeah.
Minus a few connections that we have with various companies that we've worked for. You've worked for CW, I've worked for NBC, CNBC, and HGTV, which are more reality based, minus NBC, but still. A lot of the guests that we have on are independent. They're either growing or they're relatively far into their career, but they're not like on the top of the food chain, you know, which is great because I love independent film. I know James does too. It's something that we thrive in and we enjoy. But if we're talking about anybody, I think for me personally, obviously, probably the number one when it comes to actors, and James is going to give me this look, but Matthew McConaughey. Is don't give me that look, man. I mean, you know how I am, Justin. Matthew McConaughey is like a man crush.
He's a character actor.
I love that dude. He's a character. He's good at what he does.
He's like a very specific.
Well, I mean, but that kind of comes down to a lot of his voice and how like his voice doesn't change all that much. I'll tell you one thing. He won an Oscar for.
Dallas Buyers Club?
Yes, Dallas Buyers Club. And I don't know did you see that? You didn't see that movie?
Yes.
Oh, you did see it.
Mm-hmm.
He did great, I thought. I mean, you might disagree, but I thought that was significantly different from any other role he's ever played.
I'd say it's a little different. Yeah, definitely.
And I recently read an interview, and I haven't seen it because it's not out yet, as far as I know. But White Boy Rick, which is his most recent film coming out, he in an interview he said it's something that he's never done before. This character, it's challenging to him, and I'm interested in seeing what he does because he's usually like playing the hero in some sense, where it starts off either on a positive note and he goes to struggles, or he starts off on a negative note and ends up conquering whatever it is. And in White Boy Rick, he's kind of just always on the low. He's always getting his butt kicked, and it puts him in a completely different place than what he's used to. And so I think that's something that's really interesting because for somebody who's not an actor, that's me and James, I think learning from actors not only helps us in writing and in developing projects, and for me directing, but it also allows me to understand what goes into an actor's mind when developing the character for themselves. It allows me to build my characters in the script form, and also allows me to understand how to like talk to actors to get them into whatever character I need them in, or whatever mindset or emotional standpoint I need them. So definitely, I think Matthew McConaughey would be one of the top, and then probably a director.
JJ,
yeah, J.J. Abrams is a good one. Wes Anderson is another. He's done some pretty cool stuff.
I feel like JJ is done like J.J. Abrams. We're friends, so I call him JJ. I feel like he's done a lot of different types of things.
He has
had his hands in big things.
I've noticed like the thing with JJ though is that, I mean, he has done a lot of different things, but the majority of them are all sci-fi based or related.
No, I like sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, who doesn't? Any guy in their right mind loves sci-fi to some extent. I mean, but I mean, Star Trek, Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing.
Super 8.
He spanned both Star Trek and Star Wars. No director can honestly say they've done both.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and good for him.
And I think he did well at both.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too.
I wouldn't say that the new Star Wars movies are perfect.
No,
but really, I really think like looking back on those, that's what we'll judge. We'll judge the Star Wars movies on looking back at them when we are in the future. Yeah. Like the initial reaction is going to be negative because we're messing with something that's.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you come at it.
Right now, it's going to be negative because we're not all the way through this portion of it, and then also it's kind of remaking something. You can't remake those things.
Yeah, it's like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Right.
You know, we had 3 really good Indiana Jones, and then they bring Shia LaBeouf into Indiana Jones, and
That's different.
you know, it's like, wait a second, this is vastly different, and it took place in the same time period or close to the same time period as the original movies, which is weird too. I wish they would have made it more modern. It would made more sense if it was much more modern. But yeah, you know, there's these movies where people are trying to take something that was made in the 80s, 70s, 60s even, and bring it forth to the 2000s. And it doesn't really work for most audiences because they have this set idea of what a specific film is supposed to be or what a story is supposed to be. And when you modernize it, it takes away all of the old, like, gushy feelings that you had about that story.
What I'm saying is when we move forward past Star Wars and that's been released and we look back, it'll be like a new nostalgia. If you think about it.
You mean the second half or the new series?
There's like so many.
No, you're right. For the millennials,
like the first
for the
three,
millennials,
the first 3.
You're absolutely right. Look, for the first 3, I mean, we got people like us who grew up with the original 3 Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then you got the millennials, those who were born in 2000 and, you know, up, who really, this is their first introduction to Star Wars.
Millennials, right?
No, I don't. Let's not get into that right now. So, you know, it's just the idea that those who are in their early 20s or late teens, the new Star Wars is their introduction to Star Wars. And so they're going to look back when we're like 60 years old and be like, man, in my day, we had Star Wars. It's like, but you didn't have the Star Wars.
You talk to those kids, a lot of those kids like the original Star Wars. Not the original, but their version of
it. No, absolutely. And that makes sense. That makes complete sense to me.
And I think that's going to be the same for the future.
Yeah.
For this Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen.
Sorry about that, Justin. We went on all the hats.
No, that's fine.
A rabbit trail there.
That actually shows my audience what you guys are all about. So something that I know kind of grind your gears a little bit, Eric, is rewrites or remakes. But if you guys could rewrite or remake any movie, what would it be?
This is the moment you got to put that little clock timer up. You know, that ding, 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 because this is going to take a moment.
Or is there something that you would interpret into a different movie, but it would be based on a movie?
Hard.
Little Monsters.
I love
I love Little Monsters. Don't get me wrong. I started watching it the other day, and I was getting tired, so I never finished it. But
What is that?
you don't know what Little Monsters is? No. Oh my gosh, dude!
Makes me feel.
That was my childhood, man. I think as Little Monsters or The Never-Ending Story.
I think that would be good.
I think those two,
There's
updated.
A lot of, there's a lot of things that could be better with technology today that they could improve on.
For sure. And don't get me wrong, like I love one of the things that I absolutely love about the Never-Ending Story is that everything's practical. There's no real CGI in it, you know. But beyond that,
just a tad of CGI.
No, for sure.
Make a practical.
I completely agree with you. And which is why I mentioned that particular movie, because I think it would be crazy nowadays. It'd be so cool. That and Little Monsters, I think, not just in the story, but I just think in the way that like the makeup department and art department could flourish now with the whole idea of what Little Monsters. I'll show you what Little Monsters is after this episode. I honestly, I would say if either of those two movies were given a remake, I mean, my money's gone for those movies. I'd be in the theater. I would be. Rewrites are a little more troublesome. I mean, obviously there's going to be a rewrite if there's a remake. Right. The problem I have with rewrites is that most rewrites nowadays, unfortunately, follow certain guidelines, and many of those are either a political stance that they're taking or how things are happening modern day in our world, and it's
characters to women, like all women.
Yeah, not to say that that's bad.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that that's what happened.
But that's what happens.
I think
you know?
everybody can settle on the all-woman cast of Ghostbusters was garbage.
It was. It
I
absolutely
actually
was.
haven't seen it, so
That's okay. You're saving yourself a lot of an hour and a half worth of trouble.
I did enjoy it, but I feel that changing that completely changed what Ghostbusters was.
Right. And when you have something like Ghostbusters, like anyone I think who's watched Ghostbusters know what Ghostbusters is Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
it's a group of
I
guys.
feel like they could have told that story with women by telling it like the men, something happened to them and
Look,
there had to be some.
I agree. I think it would have been really good. There's two things that really screwed up the movie. The first is that they didn't have much of a prelude to what happened, like why there's all women who are in, like all they did was they remade the series with women. They should have made it a sequel and shown us why the guys decided to get all women to join, the Ghostbusters. I think that would have made it better for one. And two is the comedy in it. All the comedy in Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters, is forced. And it's so forced that it's not even funny. I mean, I didn't laugh one time.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. On the other hand, there's a new Ocean's 11 out.
I heard it was good.
Or Ocean's 8, it's called. Huh?
I heard it was good.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard Ocean's 8 is great. I haven't watched it yet, but I heard it was great. And that's good. I'd like to hear that there is
But
a movie
that
out
was
there.
connected to the other ones.
Right.
And there was a reason for it.
Right.
That's what I'm.
And that's what makes a movie. If you're going to connect a movie that has an all-female cast to a film that was an all-male cast to some extent, because obviously there was a woman in the Oceans 11, 12, and 13.
Mhm.
But
there's several women.
there needs to be a connection to it, and that connection is what's going to, I think, truly strengthen that bond with the viewer on the new movies.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a remake idea, but the thing is, I read the Dark Tower series. Haven't finished the last book still. Like I'm like not wanting it to end, so I like keep like reading portions of it and then stopping because I know something bad's coming because everyone says something bad's coming in the last book. But basically, I would like that to be like get the like Lord of the Rings treatment or even I feel when I read it like the first few books, like I actually see an anime in my head. I don't see exactly like a regular life, real life like film. Like
Right.
I see like cartoon. It feels like animes can have this thing where they slow down, and take time on something and make it feel like really epic. A lot of animes can do that, especially with the actual Japanese like style. Like I feel like it could be turned into a really well done anime, and that like a long series that actually takes the book and turns it straight into something. I mean, a few changes won't bother me, but overall, just keep it mainly what the book is as much as you can.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I agree.
Actually, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you're going to continue on this topic or move on to something else, but in case you move on to something else, what movie would you have like remade or rewritten?
Honestly, I feel that as epic as it is, I think Shawshank should be redone.
That's interesting, actually.
Because it was an amazing movie. It was an amazing book. I would like to see either somebody else's interpretation or just a remake of it with different actors to see how well ones would do in the roles that you and I grew up watching from a young age. So I think Shawshank would be my number one, just because I unfortunately didn't read the book, but somehow I feel the book was not even close to the movie like.
Yeah, it has a different name too. It's like a woman's.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know offhand.
I can't remember. It's like a woman's name because I was looking into it when I was watching Castle Rock because Shawshank's in Castle Rock.
Okay.
It's in the. It's all throughout that series because they're in that area.
And two, I mean, Shawshank was filmed in Mansfield Prison, which Eric and I have wanted to get into for years.
Right.
To see them do it in a different prison, maybe a more modern, or not modern prison, but a more well-kept prison, because at that point, the Mansfield was in decay, and maybe that was the whole point of using it. I don't know. But it would be interesting just to see if they could find a different location that maybe fit better, too. But what I was going to say really quick is I don't know if you guys have seen the articles about Dan Aykroyd writing Ghostbusters 4 and bringing it's I've vaguely looked over them and kind of just seen the different articles people are posting, but he's saying bringing back the original cast, which you can't bring the whole original cast back, but
right.
Be interesting to see if, like you were saying, Eric, somehow in 4 he joins all 4 movies together, and why they gave it over to the women for a while. Maybe they were retired and they come out of retirement because the women screwed it all up. I'm not saying that's the storyline or that should be the storyline, but he should tie it all together so that it's not. It wasn't a remake. It was truly a sequel.
You know what? I think I've read things. There's been things about Ghostbusters 4 coming out for years now. Dan Aykroyd's been talking about that for a long time, about there being a script in process. Whether or not there really is one actually in process, or if it's just all developmental and there's ideas, I don't know. But if you can some way turn it into both a sequel and a prelude, and give us the best of both worlds, a good, strong ending to the franchise of the original Ghostbusters, but also a good, strong beginning to the new one, then maybe the new Ghostbusters movie could end up being better than what it turned out to be.
Yeah. It'll have a better foundation underneath it.
Yeah. And I think foundations are important in all walks of life, whether it's, buildings or a story.
I've ended up liking films that I've hated at first just because of theories that fans have. And it gives a foundation that wasn't there in the first place.
Did you finish
like this better?
Yeah, did you ever finish watching? Probably not. The Haunting of Hill House?
I haven't started.
Oh, okay. Justin, did you watch it? Did you watch The Haunting of Hill House?
I actually, it's on my list. I have not started.
Okay. So I talked to my mom today. I'm not going to get into it because you guys haven't watched it, but I talked to my mom today and she read not a theory, I guess it's a theory, but one of the actors had mentioned something online and he had asked a writer about what really happened at the end of the series. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit because I thought it was one thing, but now there's this whole other possibility. And it's almost a better outcome if we go with the new theory. And that's not something I'm going to mention on air because I don't know who else has watched it, but
I have a theory. It's a really old,
okay.
And people will probably hate me for it. So my theory is that Hunger Games is a prequel to Pokemon.
I mean, that's not where I thought this was going.
So I don't know. I actually read the Hunger Games, so
yeah.
I read it before I watched it, and I didn't like all of it. But one thing that's in all the books is there are animals that have been genetically altered, all throughout this world. That's something that's in the Hunger Games.
Oh, that's crazy. That's interesting.
And in every Hunger Games movie, they have this. What's it called? The little flying creature thing, the Mockingjay.
Oh,
and have it change each movie.
Does it change forms each movie?
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's evolving.
Well, I mean, yeah, to some extent.
They're actually Pidgeots.
And at the very end of the last movie, they show you the symbol evolving from the very beginning to the very end. So, and I read some theories on Pokemon that there was a war that happened before all this, and all the men must be missing because there's a lot of women and without husbands for some reason, and then all the boys are kids growing up. So there's possibly been some big war or something right before. So that's where I go. It's not very foundational and not huge, but I just think it's kind of fun.
That would be interesting. That would be really interesting.
That it could be sort of connected in some way.
Did you watch the trailer? And did you watch the trailer for Detective Pikachu?
Yeah, the day that you told me about it.
That's right. I always forget who I send them to because I send it to everybody. When I see trailers, I'm like, everybody in my contact list. But you need to watch it.
A lot of people, I saw it.
Oh, you did watch it? Okay.
Yeah. It looks good. I don't know about the voice of Pikachu, but
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
I feel like they could have gotten more of a scruffier sounding person that would have sounded.
Or someone who wasn't Deadpool.
Yep, right.
Yeah. So, okay.
He set himself for Deadpool, so now that's what you hear.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Beyond Reason and Paratruth Radio are all about paranormal stuff. Eric, you've been through multiple paranormal stuff, and it's shaped a little bit how you write. James, have you ever had any experiences or anything in the paranormal, or even just theories where it's kind of shaped some stories that you've been working on or had ideas for even?
Paranormal wise, no, I never see anything. So, but I have a sister growing up. I believe her because, she's your sister. You have to believe her. I mean, that's just how it works. But she's seen
Eric and I, you don't have to believe them.
And, demons and all kinds of stuff. It's just crazy. All of her experiences she's 6 years older than me. So when she was 12, I was 6. So I'm being raised with a sister who's seeing all these things, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know. I was always scared because my sister's freaking out about things she's actually seen. So, but for personal experiences, no, I didn't really see anything. But I do sometimes put little things of my own life into characters because I feel there's this magical thing that happens when I insert a personal thing into a character. It feels like I'm that character. I become that character, and it could be something small. It doesn't have to be a big thing or even a big life-changing event. But when I do that, when I'm writing something, I feel I feel like I can relate to that character, and I start wanting to write more. Just kind of seeing where that character goes from there. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this, James, because I know Eric, and we'll get to Eric's story a little bit. But growing up, did you come from a strict Christian background? You're saying your sister saw things, because a lot of times some Christians will frown upon that type of activity going on. Were you raised in a super Christian home? I mean, you went to Liberty, so obviously you are a Christian, but was there something like that going on where they thought your sister was going through some type of attack or something?
Hold on for a moment. I'm going to interrupt first. I'm kind of doing this as a joke. Never mind. I was going to obviously you're a Christian because you went to Liberty thing, but
there's a lot of non-Christians.
There's a lot of non-Christians at Liberty, which is part of what I very much disliked about Liberty, honestly, because they always made problems.
I didn't mind.
Isn't that what Liberty
actually had friends that were non-Christian?
Liberty is a Christian university, yeah, with very strict guidelines. And I mean, obviously I grew out of it during my time at Liberty. But when I first got there, I'm thinking like, oh, Christian school. I don't know what a Christian school is. I've never been to one, but blah, 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 Christian school. And then there's like all this horrible things happening on campus because of all these people who aren't Christian, and they're bringing.
Someone will say that they are,
and some of them who are, and some of them who are not. Don't get me wrong, some of them who are Christian were horrible too, because people can be horrible. But anyway, sorry, James, take it away, buddy.
Yeah, I was raised in a pretty strict Christian family, but I'm not strict at all religiously. I actually like to watch a lot of YouTube and stuff that are not non-Christian, like atheists talking about their points and why they don't believe in God. Because I feel like knowing why I believe what I believe, because I do believe in God, knowing why I believe what I believe, if I can sit there and watch an atheist say like every evidence they can come up with against God, and if I still believe, and I agree with some of the things they say too, actually, but I feel like I have a firmer foundation personally because I know why I believe what I believe, if that makes sense.
No, yeah.
But my parents believe in, demons and angels, and I do too. But I'm not trying to say, I'm trying to go back to, how I was raised. So my parents believed in angels and demons. I wasn't allowed to watch Wizard of Oz because there was a good witch, and they were like, witches are not good. But, I watched it when I got older, but as a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch it. So like my experience was a little different than probably some people, but I went to a public school. So I also experienced, the world normally too. So it wasn't just all strict and me going to like a private school where I was not exposed to anything.
Okay. So, Eric, I've been doing paranormal podcasting with you for almost 9 years, actually almost 10 years now.
10.
So for the audience that does not listen to Paratruth Radio, tell my audience a little bit about your background as far as the paranormal is concerned.
As far as the paranormal is concerned, well, I've always kind of been interested in the paranormal. But really it wasn't until 2008, I think it was late 2007, early 2008, something like that. It was winter, 7 or 8, I'm not sure. But I started getting really involved in research, and a lot of that research was in demonology, and not just demonology, but how to summon demons and things like that. And during that time, I kind of opened a door that I didn't realize I was opening. And so it started getting what many people call demonic oppression or affliction. And I started to have these weird visions, not during the day, but like at night. It's like it's hard to explain it. They're basically nightmares, but it was at a state where you're like, like those moments where you're almost asleep,
like twilight dreaming. Right.
Like you're falling asleep, but you're not 100% asleep. You're aware of everything that's happening around you, but you're almost out of it. So I would be in that state, and suddenly I'd have this vision of something horrifying. And, it depended on what it was always different. The very first one that I ever had was a face, like an elongated face of a man who was completely pale. His eyes are white. His mouth is wide open, and he had these weird tentacles coming out of his face and this long, stringy white hair. And of course, it snapped me awake real quick. And I've started having those for a couple of weeks, and then those turned into nightmares, and then the nightmares turned into night terrors. And I was dreaming about all kinds of weird things, creepy things that had me waking up in the middle of the night with a cold sweat. Horrifying things like cutting my own organs out of my body, or having some type of entity, demonic creature, monster thing approach me. And that happened for about a month. And then month 2, I started witnessing things in my house. It was a number of different shadows, black masses and things like that. A lot of people see those out of the corner of their eyes sometimes, but these were straight on. Like if I was looking as clearly as I see James right now, it'd be the same thing, just a black shadow standing in front of me. And then it would turn around and run down the hallway and I would chase it to find nothing. I started hearing voices in the house. My bed would sink as if somebody was sitting on it, wide awake, sitting in my bed, and my bed would just sink. I started hearing growling around 3 a.m. In the middle of the night. I had somebody whispering my name in my ear, things like that. And that went on for another 2 months or so. And it was pretty horrifying. I mean, you remember, Justin, I think you were around then. And it was pretty terrifying. I started losing a lot of sleep. I started feeling kind of ill, just tired all the time, but always afraid to, kind of literally scared of the dark type thing, like not ready to turn the lights out. And so with that said, like it eventually led up to, 2008, 2009, September 2009, and old friend or acquaintance of ours, which was pretty funny because I used to journal all this stuff for those 3 months into a journal. And she was like, there's nothing that you witnessed that's worse than what I've witnessed. And so I handed her my journal and she took it. And the next day she came back and handed me the journal back and was like, never mind. That's really freaking scary. I've never seen anything like that. And so she gave us like this weird meditation thing to do to try to cleanse my soul, if you will, to get rid of these negative entities. And during that process, I ended up like giving everything to God, not realizing exactly who God was or what I was doing, but I still did it knowing like I'm giving this to God. And something changed that night, like I was sitting in the rain. It was part of the thing, like barefoot in shorts and a t-shirt at night in the grass. And it was raining that night and I gave everything to the Lord and I had this overwhelming joy. And immediately, as soon as I said, Lord, I give this all to you, the rain stopped and the clouds parted and there's this full moon that was like brighter than I've ever seen before. From what I remember, it was like, it looked white, and sometimes the moon has a yellow tinge, but it was like the whitest I've ever seen.
It was super white. I remember that.
Yeah. And I just took it as this moment of the Holy Spirit descending upon me. And from that day forward, I became a Christian. I went to church, learned more about who Jesus was, who my Savior was. And from there, it's been who I was from September 2009 till now. And I started, preaching the good news. And obviously our radio show took a big turn. So I brought in a whole different side of evidence for the paranormal. And that's pretty much it. That's where we've been. Since then, I've still have my encounters with entities. But, like nowadays, it's no longer something that I fear. It's just something that happens in passing. It's like, oh, great, another one. But hey, God's here. So
I got saved. Me and my sister were sitting on my dad's bed. My dad was sitting there too. He showed us a magic trick and we got saved.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was like a magic trick with a string where you pull it through your fingers as if like it goes actually through your. You know what I'm saying?
So yeah.
So yeah,
that's
pretty
cool.
crazy.
It is crazy.
So James, just FYI, you're very lucky that you've never seen anything. Just coming from Eric's perspective.
I feel like there is a level of faith or belief that comes from actually seeing stuff. So like, I feel like sometimes I'm like, how do I even know that any of this exists if I've never seen it? So I don't know. It's just, does that make sense?
Yeah, but to be fair, I've seen stuff, Eric's seen stuff, but I think both him and I both still question, is it something we're really seeing? Is it something that's real? And Eric, I may be talking for you, I don't know, but no. I think that I get what you're saying, though. How can you say I believe these things are real if you've never had an experience? I get what you're saying.
Not even I did have dreams once, but that's all people have scary dreams. Those are things that people have. And they were like in succession together, and I prayed and they went away. So, I guess when I was in the bathroom looking in the mirror, it was quick. I was in the bathroom looking in the mirror and I remember, and I just felt something behind me and I turned around and it was like a person in all black, like even like a hood, even sort of like a really white face. And I can't even like picture the face, like it was like a blur or something. And I remember like jumping up on the counter and like being in the fetal position and then waking up in my bed. And then also like not long after that one, like I walked in the front door of that same house. So the house that I was sleeping in was in the dream. So it's kind of weird. That's why I was like, this is different. This is maybe a little different. I walked in the front door and then you could see like the entrance to one of the bedrooms from the entrance. Like you could see the door and there was like a dog. It looked like a dog like in the room. And when I walked through the door, but it was like on its hind legs. It was like on 2 feet. I'm
not laughing at you. I'm thinking of the situation.
And then like when I walked through the door, it turned and then started running at me. And it wasn't huge. It wasn't a big, it was like a small dog looking thing, but it wasn't a dog. It was something else.
Yeah.
And then I woke up as it was approaching me. And then I prayed like over the house because I was like, you know, both of these dreams are happening in the house. So just to be safe, you know, I prayed like through the house and like just to be sure. I don't know. And then I didn't have any more dreams.
Yeah. Was the dog dream thing,
like shadowy,
whatever it was, but it was black.
I like more of a like a pitch black, but like a more of a grayish, dark gray.
Okay, I was going to say, Justin, because it's actually interesting, and I don't know why it's never come up on our show on Paratruth before, but the idea, you know, the whole idea of the black dog, you know, we know what happens or supposedly happens according to myth when you see a black dog. James, I don't know if you know this or not, but supposedly if you see a black dog out in wherever you're at, you know, cemetery or just crossing the street, whatever, it's a bad omen, and it's an omen of death. And as such,
nobody died.
No, well, okay. no, I know, but
as far as I know.
But and just for the sake of the conversation here, or the idea is, I've never thought about like what happens, or if there's a difference between seeing a black dog in real life or seeing a black dog in your dreams.
Well, you and I have talked about the correlation of dreams to spiritual events as well. So you could have still been going through a spiritual event, James, and not even known it because you were sleeping, so you thought it was a dream. But in that same context, you prayed and it stopped. So that, I think, answers that question right there.
And if not, it answers one question.
Maybe. I mean,
God is real.
I mean, I believe in God already.
No, I know, but it's just that extra little, you know.
Yeah, the way I believe in God is I feel like I have a 50% rule, and I kind of learned this from school. If I can believe that God exists more than 50%, if that makes sense. If I 50% believe more than I 50% disbelieve, then I believe in God.
Oh yeah,
that's how it works. And I think I'm about 75%.
Okay.
You know, there's a chance.
I mean,
there's a small.
I think it's fair.
I'm like, maybe not, but
yeah,
I believe enough that.
But I mean, I think it's fair to question.
Yeah.
You know, whether God exists or even to question your own faith, and I think that's part of the whole faith in general.
And Jesus says mustard seed, so I think over 50% is more than a mustard seed.
Right, for sure.
All right, well, we are coming close to the end of the show, guys, so I want to give you guys a chance to tell everybody where they can find the show. If they can get in contact with you guys, the mic is all yours.
You want me to do it?
So, I mean, we're on iTunes, we're on I think we're on SoundCloud. I have not actually physically checked to see if we're on SoundCloud, but we are linked to SoundCloud. So we should be on there. We should be pretty much anywhere but Spotify, because Spotify has these like weird rules. But we're pretty much anywhere you get podcasts, and it's just All the Hats. And some places it's All the Hats Pod, because All the Hats was taken in some places. So All the Hats Pod is our email address at gmail.com. Facebook /All the Hats, and what was the we put it at the end of every episode too. Now we weren't at first, but anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. You covered it.
Oh wow,
it's pretty pretty slim pickings, but it's not.
We're everywhere.
You find us everywhere.
I think anybody could get something and listen.
YouTube's another one.
Yeah, we're on YouTube.
Sorry, we when you listen to Paratruth, me and Justin kind of have it figured out as a who says what if we're saying anything, but me and James haven't quite figured that out yet.
No, but we also have
we're like,
so we don't have
where
to.
are we? No, yeah, I know.
And then I have it set up so we can like switch it a little bit too, because we said it a bunch of times.
You called us off our game.
Yeah. So why do we need to keep saying it? We have a recording of it. But I mean, for this purpose, I guess we wouldn't need to keep saying it.
Yeah, so you can find us anywhere you can find podcasts. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, and otherwise, then feel free to email us at allthehats@gmail.com.
Allthehatspod.
Allthehatspod@gmail.com. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook. I think we have our Twitter.
We have a Twitter.
We have a Twitter up as well. So you can do twitter.com/allthehats or allthehatspod.
I don't remember.
Try both.
Just look up all the hats.
Just look up all the hats. You'll find it.
I'll tell you one thing that we've done is we've been the worst when it comes to telling people where to find us of all of Justin's podcasters of the month.
Yeah. But I mean,
they're like, what are these guys doing? Who are where are they?
I feel like if people want to find us, if they type in all the hats on whatever, they'll get there. It's not a common thing that people use all the hats.
And the main place you guys release is on Spreaker, correct?
Right.
Yes.
All right, folks. That is Eric and James. Eric and James, thank you so much for being on Beyond Reason.
Oh, thank you for inviting us.
All right, folks. That was Eric and James from All the Hats. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure that you check out All the Hats. It's an amazing podcast. And make sure you're checking out Beyond Reason everywhere you can find me. So until next week, keep those minds open. This is Justin Cancilliere signing off.
And cut. Good.
Cut. All right.
Fix this
You want me to cut that one? So we'll go ahead and talk it.
That was simple. Same thing.
Feel free to email us at allthehatspod@gmail.com.
And if you would like to check out our schedule or any other information about us, we are on facebook.com/allthehats.
And of course, be sure to stream us wherever you stream podcasts.